Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm about to start the show. And listen, yes, I know Thanksgiving is just a couple days away, but Christmas is right around the corner. And you have time right now. If you have not gotten Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, it's a bestseller. And it's a bestseller because it changes people's lives. It will make you more aware and able to actually literally do threat assessments on your own life. There's stories in there, there's case studies, and more important than anything else, there are lessons that are easy to learn, not written on an operator level, but so that you can understand them. And for your children, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. It's a book of pictures that you, the parent or the teacher, can then go give that to the child and then go and get the lesson plans at teamlittlebigs.com. The lessons are built into the pictures. The lesson plans are at the website. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's got 2 workbooks that come with it. And The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. Go get them wherever books are sold, and let's start the show.
The truth has arrived.
My name is Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts. And welcome back to the show. And man, what a difference a week makes. Every week in 2020 has been something different every week, and it doesn't get any easier. It just doesn't get any easier. And I'm going through the news today, and I'm looking at different things, and I'm trying to figure out, what is going on with the president's fight sorry, Twitter, if you want to fact check this, or Facebook or anybody else, but if the president's fight to get one step ahead of this fraud. One of the, I got to tell you, I know I always I push Connect Zing, and I do these live reads of Connect Zing. Connect Zing is a social media app. It's like Facebook. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that's going to come together with Connect Zing, but this isn't a commercial, believe it or not, about Connect Zing. I'm the chief marketing officer for Connect Zing, and my buddy Drago, who I talk about all the time, and his wife Rachel. They're the other executives. Rachel's the CEO, and Drago is the I forgot what it's called. It's the he's the programmer. He's the tech guy. He's the one that created it. And Drago, if you go listen to the second podcast that I've had, if you go to wherever you listen to this, iTunes or Spotify or wherever, you go to number 2, you're going to hear his whole story about, and I talk about him a lot on here. You're going to hear the story about how, he was a Polish citizen and how he was held in a gulag. It's a re-education prison, basically, by the socialist government there for being a part of the Freedom Underground by having a typewriter. And one of the things we're striving for on Connect Zing is to not to censor you so that you can say these things. And if you have an analysis of something of yourself, then you have that. But it is unbelievable, and it's nothing new for anybody, but it's, again, as we go through and we see now how the left has just calmed down now that Joe Biden is in this position where they may actually pull this off. And what has increased, like their anger and their aggressive behavior seems to have piped down a little bit. The Republicans, just 2 weeks ago, were all up in arms about the way that Jack Dorsey from Twitter and Facebook and Google were all, censoring us, and they had to have a whistleblower come in there and tell them, and which was no surprise to us that they uniformly censor us. So they can censor and do censor across the board. Facebook doesn't like something, they censor it, and Twitter censors it. YouTube, which, I don't know if you realize this, but not only does YouTube and is kind of owned by Google, but look at who runs these things. They're intermarried. It's just like the media and the Obama administration. By the way, Joe Biden's administration is basically the Obama administration, just going to be the same thing. So they're going to own media again. And the reason I brought up with Connect Zing, or brought that up, was the fact that I go on there, I say whatever I want, and I'm not worried about it. But yet you go to Facebook or Twitter, and I'm constantly inundated by, this has been fact checked. It's not like it's been fact checked by anybody who's anything extra. They don't fact check things that they agree with. It's only things they don't agree with, not necessarily things that aren't true. It's not like they're the honest, news busters out there who are on the high moral ground. In fact, Google talks all the time about their Google values. They never mention God. It's not about morals and ethics. It's about what they think is right, what they like. That's if it's not what they like, if it's not what they think is right, they will censor you. And now as we go in, this whole game is just, I got to be honest with you, it's pretty damn amazing sitting back and watching what they have done. And you compare and contrast that. Remember, we always look at the totality of the circumstances, right? We look at the entire picture. And you look at the past 4 years and how it was like the Keystone entrapment cops trying to get the president jammed up on something, right? They spent 4 years, really it's 5 years. It started before he became president. They spent almost 5 years trying to get him jammed up on something here, something there, anything that they could do, anything they could make up, and they would work together. It didn't matter if it was the Senate or the Congress or judges, or if it was people in state and local government or Silicon Valley or the media. They all worked together. But it was never that great. They would always come up short. You would think that they would have enough people that would coordinate their lies. But the problem is if you lie and you're not able to create evidence to back up your lies, right? That's really the key. That's really where we catch people in their lies. They say these things and there's no evidence to back up what they're saying. So they can say all they want. They can pressure people all they want. They can, and this is what bad people do. They gang up on people. They put pressure on people. They use trickery and deception and dominion over people. But yet if they don't have the evidence, if they don't have the truth, and they don't have evidence of the truth, there's always going to be that vacuum. And that vacuum really does pull. And once stuff starts to cave into that vacuum, it never ends up well. And that's the way it was for the past 4 or 5 years. They would come up with these things. They tried to manufacture a fake dossier, but they arrested the wrong people. General Flynn in particular, he stood up to them. And there was a couple other people that stood up here, stood up there, but ultimately they just didn't have the proof, because when the proof was examined by real people who examined, not these social media validators of information that they don't like, when it was really put to the test, it came out that the stuff was fake. And you can look at everything they did over the past 4 years, and it would be like an investigation. You're like, man, we have a dead body. We have a weapon. There's no prints on it. If we just had blood spatter, we would know which direction the person came from, or the blows or the strikes came from. And then all of a sudden, blood spatter just appears, right? Well, that doesn't happen in the real world in investigations, and it consistently happened over the past 5 years. They would say, well, we need if a leaker, boom, there's a leaker all of a sudden. A phone call, boom, all of a sudden there's a phone call. And then they could spin that. It was before that, it was, wow, we just so happened to have, Obama passed a law where they could spy on American citizens if, I don't know exactly what it was. This happened before the president even got into office. And they did that so they could spy on all these people. It kind of came down to some of the people that were in Trump's cabinet and even his campaign at the beginning, Carter Page mainly, and General Flynn. And they would just manufacture these meetings, or you would have an ambassador from another country just pop up and say, we should have a meeting to talk about this. And they go meet him, and mysteriously it's recorded. And mysteriously the ambassador asked him about these very specific things. And then those very specific things were used to try and jam the president up and his cabinet. And it didn't work. It didn't work because they were making it up as they go along. That is the key to this. And they even had people from, definitely from the Republican Party. John McCain was involved with this. Many, many other people. Mitt Romney is like, the guy reminds me of trying to beat somebody to death with a limp, dead fish. He's always in there, but he's just worthless. Can't even be a good bad guy. But over the past 5 years, they've been making it up as they went along. And they have not mastered that. But what they also did while all that was going on was, and I think COVID is this interesting thing that just happened in 2019. I mean, the further we get along and the more conspiratorial things become, because they're not conspiratorial, because they're actual facts. I mean, you look at the past 4 years, and I can't believe that we haven't literally gone full force into civil war after the lies and the trickery to overthrow a president for the past 4 years, and to overthrow his campaign before that, and to rig the election 4 years ago, and nobody did anything. And one of the biggest mistakes this president made and the American people made was that while they were, and the past 4 years could have been, hey, let's throw it up against, I'm talking about the Democrats, hey, let's throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks. And if it doesn't, we'll throw something else up against the wall. And while we're doing that, we're going to figure out exactly how to skew the election in 2020. Now, I had COVID. I know people who've died from COVID. I've talked about this a lot, but I have to be honest with you. I find it very mysterious, and I was talking about this today with some people, the timing in which COVID came, and how at the very end of the year, it came around in January, February, started spreading in and around March. It went through the roof until May. And why is that? It's because Democrat mayors, think about this with me, Democrat mayors put COVID positive people into elderly clinics and killed a massive amount of people. We don't even know exactly how many people, 60 to 90,000 people. Could have been more. We don't know. I mean, in Manhattan right now, in New York City, there's still over 200 dead bodies in frozen freezer trucks that have never been buried. They're just there. So I want you to think about this. This virus comes out of nowhere, supposedly China. It comes out of China, right? Developed in China. It comes into the United States January, February. It lingers. It lingers and looks like it is deadly, but it lingers. And then all of a sudden in March, it goes through the roof, not because the virus became worse, not because it got spread by natural means, by people talking to each other. It went through the roof because of the mandates that leftist governors from the Democrat Party enacted. And you can't deny that. That's not, I'm sorry, Facebook and Twitter, that's not fake. That's true. So this stuff sprung up until May, when they stopped putting these people in these homes, and they had enough people to say, oh my gosh, it's deadly, it's going to, they're going crazy. You had all these riots, the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, and multiple other unusual incidents between cops and different people. And these riots occurred, and they sustained these riots in all the major cities. Now, I want you to think about this. Again, I'm trying to look at the totality of all this stuff, okay? the riots, or excuse me, the virus comes here. The death rate goes through the roof. The riots occur. Now, that's three things. Okay? The riots continue. Any reason they have or they can come up with, they riot. The economy in these cities, very interesting. You go to Florida, which I've been. You go to Texas, where I've been. You go to Arkansas, where I've been. You go to Arizona, where I've been. Thriving. The economies are thriving. And then you go to a Democrat city or a Democrat-ran state, and the economy is crashed. That's four things, right? The spread of the virus, that happened starting in January, February of 2020, right before the election, right? This virus comes here, spreads like crazy. And then all of a sudden, well, let me back up, okay? The virus comes here, let's just say that. And then the death rate goes through the roof, right? Goes through the roof because of Democrat governors and mayors. Death rate goes through the roof. All of a sudden, the death rate stops. The riots start right on key, right around May, and all the rest of the way through. So again, I'm going to go back and go through it again. The virus gets here, just so happens to get here in 2020, right before the election. The death rate skyrockets. Took 2 months, all because of Democrat mayors and governors. The riots occur in Democrat cities, Democrat states. And then when you look at the economies and how they have shut down and brutalized the people in this nation, it is in Democrat cities and Democrat states. So that's four things, four major things, right? 3 out of 4 have been occurring because and in Democrat states and Democrat cities. Now, when you look at this from an investigative standpoint, what do you see? Again, the totality of the circumstances. You saw a real crisis turn into a major swing and downfall of the economy, of the social structure, and of the death and ferociousness of this virus, all caused by Democrat governors and mayors. You see, that's why you always look at the totality of the circumstances. If you just look at the problem and you say, well, I think or I feel, you're going to miss the threads that line all these things together. And when I look at the past year, and I'm only picking out 4 things. I said that first one, that the virus came here, I can't really pin that on the Democrats. The other 3 things I can. The spread of the virus, the ferocity of the virus, the riots and the destruction of the city. And you can even add another one in there, the defunding and the destruction of police departments. Right, so now we have 5, and 4 out of 5 are all Democrat cities and Democrat governors and Democrat activists and Democrat donors and so on and so forth. So I spent the day thinking about the totality of the circumstances, and from an investigative standpoint, that one particular thing that just stood out, that virus, it got here, it came from China. I mean, that is the one thing where, if I sound conspiratorial now, the way I'm looking at things, it almost appears that, and it's very interesting, that the one guy who's running for president who has the strongest ties to China, which is Joe Biden, not President Trump, Joe Biden has extreme ties with China. It's very interesting how he's now being called the president-elect, and how this whole thing in the election process, because of the mail-in ballots, which were based on, not on the overall numbers of COVID, not based on how well some cities are doing versus the other. The mail-in ballots were all determined because of what was happening in Democrat cities. And by and large, they were mailed out in Democrat cities and Democrat states. Now, you should think about that. because all of these things that I'm saying are manufactured crises. They took one crisis. Rahm Emanuel said it himself. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Make the most out of it, what you can. So we have this virus coming from a country where the guy who's now supposedly going to go in and be our president, it was the biggest proponent of that country. It came from China. Joe Biden's relationship with China is unbelievable. He's a huge supporter of China. So the virus came from there. But, okay, let's just say, you know what? Let's just keep that conspiracy out. Let's just say, and we don't, okay, but let's just say that we know for a fact that the virus came from China and it was a fluke and it happened and it came here and it spread all over the world, whether, it was malicious or not with China. Let's just take that out and put that to the side. Everything else that we bring up, whether it be about the virus or the rioting or anything else, has been created and amplified by the Democrats and supported by Democrat people. And they just take it at gospel truth. We look at this is the other thing. It pisses me off, but it's crazy at the same time that it continues to happen and how vile and in your face the left is. Okay? You got to wear a mask. You can't go here or you can't go there without a mask. You can't have more than 10 people in your home. The weirdo governor of Pennsylvania, even says that he's going to stop alcohol sales the day before Thanksgiving. That's like prohibition type or communist type rule. But yet those are the same people that are going to group retreats in Hawaii right now as we speak, whereas nobody else can do these things. They're going and having these huge group retreats out there. You have Gavin Newsom having dinner with friends, congregated in restaurants with no masks. That's happened multiple times. You have Cuomo being caught here or there without a mask. His brother, complaints by the Chris Cuomo from CNN being complained on by all the people living in his building because he's not wearing his mask. You have Democrat politicians from New York City going to a wedding. It had not a wedding. It was a support gala for somebody. They were just up there kissing each other's asses. Nobody wearing masks. And the way they reacted was like, F you, we weren't hurting anybody. There was 10 people there, and then we shuffled people in and out. And then somebody came out with a picture showing that was not the case. That's a flat out lie. And these people don't care. They just keep doing it. And nothing happens. Look at Joe Biden. Look at the stuff with Hunter Biden. That's not manufactured, folks. That computer is real. I have sources. I know the reality of this computer. You can take my word for it or not. You had that guy that was with Hunter Biden's company who came out on Tucker Carlson and said all these things. It was one of the most credible. I talked to several people, including, and he's probably listened to this, a doctor of psychology. And he said, that's the most credible thing I've ever seen anybody say on television about Hunter Biden and all the things he did. Joe Biden goes out and does his, whatever you want to call that, drive-up rally for their victory, which still hasn't been confirmed. And Kamala Harris is up there, and they had their families. And Hunter Biden's up there with a kid in his arm. And then Joe Biden leans down with no mask and talks, of course, zeroes in on a little girl that's on the stage who was with Kamala Harris. I don't know if it's her granddaughter or what, but they just do and say whatever they want and with no regard to the perception. Because when we look at I used to hate this when I first came to New York, and everybody would say perception is reality. And I always thought, I don't like that, because I would want perception of me to be what it actually is, the reality. Not saying that the perception is the reality, but I'm a good guy, so I'm perceived like a good guy. Not this person over there is a total bag of turds, and but yet he pulls it off and makes everybody believe that he's a good guy. That's perception is reality. He's going to get treated like a good guy because he knows how to work the system and make everybody perceive him as a good guy, even though he's a bag of turds. I didn't like it, but that's what the Democrats do. That's what Joe Biden does. That's what the Democrats do. You know how many people I've talked to that I used to be good friends with that live in New York City, and they're all like, "Oh no, New York's great. New York's fine. It's the same New York. I love New York. I see them on Facebook. I love New York." New York is a shithole. The crime is out of control. Robberies, people being pushed on the tracks and the subway. I wouldn't even ride the subway now in New York City if you live there. There's people getting pushed on the tracks every other week. Crime is out of control there. Homelessness, drugs everywhere. You know, in Oregon, I think it was Oregon. It's either Oregon or Washington State. They just made heroin legal. You just take heroin. I mean, do they think that's going to lead to a better society? They don't really care. Again, getting back to what I was talking about before. When you look at the totality of the circumstances, there's several things that jump out. And one of them is that every single bit of this has been manufactured by the Democrats before 2020. I'm not saying that they manufactured the virus, but I'm saying it's a huge coincidence. It's a huge coincidence that the virus sprang up and they bing, bang, boom, yada, 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 have all these issues, and they all go to Democrats. And then when you look at the ballots, it's the same way. Whenever they find more ballots, they're Biden ballots. And we're not talking like they found 5. We're talking like they found 30,000 or 100,000, and they're all Bidens. And they just happen to be in the cities and in the counties where it's, again, Democrat Party ran. You don't find those even in places where, there may be a lot of liberals that live there, but it's not Democrat ran, or there's not a major city there. You don't see these ballots popping up. They only popped up in key locations. Now, we could go on and on about different things here and there about what is fraud and what's not. Just, this is the only thing you have to remember for this show, is that the fraud occurs, or the questions of fraud occur, in Democrat-ran cities. Where did the water pipe burst like 20 miles away that had nothing to do with the effect of the vote count in Georgia? Democrat-ran area. Where did they find tens of thousands of ballots that were dumped here or dumped there? They just popped up. Democrat-ran cities. So here's my analysis of the whole thing. This is the bottom line of the whole thing. When I look at the totality of the circumstances, not just of the vote, but of all these other things I talked about, I think, for me, there's huge suspicion that either this virus broke out in China, just like if Ebola broke out in Africa. Let's say that this was Ebola and not coronavirus, right? Let's say it was Ebola, or let's say it was something that came from Zimbabwe. Let's just pick a place, okay? Or South Africa. I know the jungles down in French Guiana, for instance, or down around Panama. They're vicious jungles. We did jungle warfare down there. You step 3 feet into a jungle, there's stuff that wants to kill you. Heck, you step 2 feet into it. I remember being in Honduras on the range. We cleared the range. Or they already had it cleared, but we built them a whole new range, went down there. We were training these guys. And I remember at the back of the range is where the jungle started. And the first thing you saw was this giant grotesque thing on the side of a tree that went all the way to the ground, about 15 feet up in the air, mounded over by the tree. And it was a termite mound. Millions and millions of these termites. That was literally a foot into the jungle. If you stepped into the jungle, there is stuff that's going to kill you if you laid down. Where was I going with this? I always get lost in these stories. The heck was I saying there? Oh yeah, Zimbabwe. So let's say instead of the coronavirus or COVID-19 breaking out in China, okay? Let's say it was Ebola or something like Ebola, and it broke out in Zimbabwe. In in December of 2019, it became known in the press this thing is occurring, and it's everybody's worried about it. And then all of a sudden, it makes its way here. Why wasn't it contained? How did it get out? What allowed it to spread all over the place? Was it people flying here? Was it just a coincidence that this virus just came at that point? And then the Democrats went and put infected people in with elderly people, and so they just increased the numbers, and then they're able to say whatever they want. Or could it be that somebody purposely brought that virus over here so they could get this spun up? I was even going so far today as thinking that what if this virus was created in China and there was already an antidote for it, or whatever they call it, not antidote, but a inoculation for it, a vaccine for it, right? But they went ahead and brought it over here and spread it. And then it got into, I know I'm sounding all kind of tinfoil hattish, but here's the problem, folks. Here's the problem. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but here's the problem. Everything else, except for where the virus started and how it got here, everything else we absolutely know that it increased and was used, and other issues were made way worse in Democrat cities and in Democrat states. That's how you look at the totality of the circumstances. That's how you say to yourself, okay, we should pause and we should really look at this election. Because over the past 4 years, while all these things were happening with Trump and all the attention, every news agency was Trump, 24 hours a day, Trump bad, this is happening, that's happening. And actually he was doing an incredible job running the country. I mean, considering everything they had to deal with on a daily basis, he did a pretty amazing job. Economy was great. People were getting jobs. Everybody felt free. And while that was occurring, and everybody was going about their business and hating on the news because the news is fake, and and it got to a point where we didn't want to turn the news on, because if it wasn't the media talking about Trump, it was Trump talking about the media. You don't want to, it was just worthless. It was worthless over the past 4 years. And so while all this is going on and they're throwing everything up against the wall to see if it sticks, it just appears to me, when I look at the totality of the circumstances, that 2020 was, oh man, I'm getting conspiratorial, but planned in advance. That the entire circumstance of what's occurred and how it's occurred was something that happened or was planned in advance. I don't have any other way to look at this when I'm looking at the totality of the circumstances. I just don't. And it bothers me because things are this conspiratorial that it really actually does bother me. because I don't like being this way. I don't like being conspiratorial. But when I look at these circumstances, it is odd. Now, here's the other thing that stands out. The more I look at history, and the more I look at, which I've talked about in this show before, demonic influence, I can't help but keep going back to the fact that when you look out through history, you never see darkness cover the entire globe. It always covers this region or that region, right? It always affects this country very badly, or it spreads a little bit in or a lot over a small area. Hitler's a perfect example. There was Hitler and there was Stalin. And Hitler took over a certain area in Eastern Europe. You had Stalin was in charge of Russia, and then you had the Japanese. And the rest of the country was pretty tame at that point. There wasn't a tremendous amount of things going on. It wasn't like there was upheaval all over the place. Those three places. And interestingly enough, in all three places, there were social issues happening that allowed for the indoctrination of people. In Japan, you had the emperor, you had people that, were told, the whole nation was told, we are superior. And they believed that. And so society was formed in a certain way at that point in particular time in Japan to where they became very aggressive. When you look at Germany and how they were a depressed economy, a depressed country, and Hitler rose up at that point in time and was allowed to rise up. And then because he was able to do certain things and strong arm in certain ways, different groups of people, he was able to take power and influence people so that they literally believed that he was a great leader. Society is the one in Germany. The German society allowed Hitler to flourish because they felt like the country was doing better and they were indoctrinated. And in Russia, you had Stalin, who, following Lenin, developed a strong arm and suppressed the people. And so the people gave in. And that's how he became stronger. So in all three of these locations, you had demonic forces because, listen, there's a limited amount of demons who are fallen angels, and only one Satan, who's the god of this world. God himself says that. And there's a limited amount of these influences in the world. There's a limited amount. And so you don't see darkness come over the entire world. Up until now, you saw it in places. And through influence and indoctrination and power in a lot of ways, that those demonic forces were able to either influence a group that and who was in power, and then they would in turn oppress people, or they would in turn indoctrinate people, and then it stopped because they didn't have the reach. The reach was regional, or it was in a country. And that explains why certain places throughout history go dark. But now what you see is globally, because of computers and smartphones and technology, that evil influence can spread around the globe. And for the first time, it looks very similar. When you see the maps of the election of the United States, and it's when you look at counties, right? If you can get a map and look at the election results per county, you're going to see that the majority of the country is red. But where the majority populations are, they are blue. In the cities where people congregate. I mean, goodness, you look at North Dakota, I think it is. They have 700,000 people in the entire state. You look at the New York City metropolitan area, there's 8 million people in that area. So when you look at South Dakota or North Dakota, or you look at places like that, the majority of those places are red. But when you look where the major cities are, they're going to be blue because of the cosmopolitan, or, because people are from all over the place and you have different cultures. And plus you live in a city. After living in a city and growing up in the South, I'll tell you the difference is that you live on top of each other in the cities. And because of that, compromise and the rule of law is much greater, because most of these cities they feel like not everybody can carry a gun, because, people shoot each other all the time, and which wasn't true before, but that's what they say. So they oppress a little here. You can't say certain things because you're going to offend certain people in a city. So you can't, so that right is reduced a little bit. Law enforcement has a much heavier presence in these areas. So naturally the people give over their responsibility of safety over to police. And then police end up doing things that they shouldn't do. They can't take care of everybody. They can't do it. People should be doing that themselves, but they don't, and they turn that over to the police. And so these areas become more and more liberal. And then when you add on top of that the demonic influence that's in these major metropolitan areas, what you have are, instead of regions like Germany and Russia and Japan, and the 3 different issues in 3 different countries, but the influencers there, whether it be indoctrination or what, however I went through it. Now you have major cities around the world where the liberal evil influence has just permeated politics and law enforcement and the people through the Department of Education and through technology. And when you look at the globe, it's not that the globe is dark. It's that the major populated areas are, because the influence can be shared in a blink of an eye, where that could not happen before up until modern history. So looking at the election process and looking at the past year in the United States and the world, but particularly the United States, and all these things I talked about a little while ago, how they all point back to these liberal cities and liberal states. When I look at demonic influence and history, how these evil people have risen up, now it is possible, and it's been shown, that the coordination of evil is to a point where they don't have to own the entire world. They don't have to cover the world with a blanket of darkness. They just have to cover the cities and own the cities. And they will get what they want, unless the people wake up and rise up against that, basically. Now, I'll say this one last thing about Black Rifle Coffee. The kid from Wisconsin, he's actually from Illinois, I guess, and that shot the people that were attacking him in Wisconsin. Kyle Rittenhouse, I believe is his name. I think on camera, one of the greatest examples of self-defense and proper weapons handling that I've ever seen. He didn't shoot one person that wasn't attacking him. He didn't randomly shoot anybody else. Even when he was in the moment of attack, his rounds weren't flying all over the place. He literally took out only the people who were attacking him. Greatest example of self-defense and proper weapons handling I think I've ever seen from a defensive standpoint. I'll put it to you this way. I would put my name behind that kid. If I had the ability to say, and not sponsor him, but like say, yeah, I endorse him and I endorse his actions. let's put it this way. I endorse the kid. I endorse his actions. I think he was there for the right reasons. I think he should be able to carry a weapon in all 50 states. I think what's happened to his and everybody else's rights to carry a weapon is a bastardization of what the founding fathers intended. And I think when he went there to stand with his brothers and sisters because of the nonsense of the left, I think he did what was right. And when they attacked, you didn't see him going full-fledged and mowing everybody down. He only shot the people who were attacking him. And they've shown that they will kill you. So, yes, I do support that kid. He's a young man. And I think he should be acquitted. And if he's smart, he'll go into special forces. With some shooting skills like that, it'll be wasted otherwise. However, anyway, he took a picture with some guys from the Blaze Media. That's Glenn Beck's company. And he had on Black Rifle Coffee shirt. And evidently their marketing person flipped out because of that and went haywire saying this or that. They're going to cut ties with Blaze and that they are not sponsoring him and sponsoring him. Well, what are you sponsoring for? It's not like he's going around teaching shooting. I don't know what they're talking about sponsoring him, but they immediately said, we're not sponsoring him. And then they backed off from those comments a little bit because they got a shitstorm coming down on them from social media. And so they backed off from those comments. And then the CEO goes up there and talks about how, and has to reiterate, because the other shitstorm they're getting is from the left. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, a company called Black Rifle Company that's all veterans, that some guy that shot people in self-defense would be wearing a shirt saying Black Rifle Coffee. I mean, in Black Rifle Coffee does advertising on the Blaze. So you see how this all got spun up. What happened is that the CEO comes out and gives a video talking about, and I'm not even going to play it because it's just worthless, but he comes out, you can find it on my social media. He comes out and he talks about how they do not profit through tragedy. I mean, listen, quite frankly, if they did say, yes, we sent him a shirt, we helped bail the kid out because he is somebody who acted right with a black rifle, and veterans here all think that you should be able to have your Second Amendment, and this kid did it right. He didn't kill anybody that wasn't attacking him. But that's not what they did, because the left started complaining to them, and rather than either shut their mouths or say what I just said, they came out and raised this ruckus saying, no, we don't profit through any type of these things that have tragedy, I think is the word he used. In other words, calling this a tragedy. And he kept reiterating that. Never did he say, we said this because, there's liberal people that work here, and we don't want to make the liberals mad because then, they'll stop buying our coffee, or they won't let us advertise on certain things, or, that's exactly what happened. Then he goes on to talk about how much they're veteran owned, and they support veterans. They give 400 veterans jobs, and this and that, veteran. Everything's veteran. Well, listen, I got news for you. You can be a veteran and own a veteran and own a company and profit from the exploitations of being a veteran. And this company clearly does that. So they'll build their company on the backs of being veteran owned, selling to veteran coffee, veteran, everything's veteran. I mean, they like literally bleed veteran, but yet somebody who does something that the left doesn't like, and they totally capitulate to it. And so I disagree with that. I don't drink their coffee anyway, to be honest with you. I don't order coffee, and I go wherever it's at the store or whatever, and I get coffee and I drink it. Because I always put honey. I love a lot of honey in there. I like coffee sweet. And some almond milk. As long as it's not Dunkin' Donuts coffee, that stuff makes me dizzy. I don't like Dunkin' Donuts coffee. You people that drink Dunkin' Donuts are a bunch of weirdos. I love you, but it's a deadly coffee. I literally was in the FBI one time, was on surveillance, drank some Dunkin' Donuts coffee, And I kid you not, I lost my equilibrium. I had to lay down in the back of my vehicle because I could not tell which way was up or down. I don't know if I was having a stroke. I don't know. But at that point, I swore off Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Now, their donut holes are really good, but their coffee sucks. So, getting back to this. Somebody came on and said, well, you were in the FBI. There's bad people at the top of the FBI. I'm sure you didn't stand for what they stood for in the FBI, but well, guess what? I left the FBI, and that's why. And I don't agree at this point in time that people should be capitulating to leftists or socialists. So there's my rant on that. Anybody wants to come back to me on social media, whatever, I don't care. Well, one last thing. This guy Ali, who's like a grifter, who's all over social media, he's like in cahoots with Alex Jones and this Stop the Steal nonsense. I've held my tongue way too long on that. Stop the Steal. Now they have this other support Trump bus tour or something like that. A March for Trump bus tour. Listen, don't give your money to these things. That's why I tried to tell people. We went to Washington, D.C. a week or two ago. I kept telling them, don't go to Washington, D.C. Save your money. Everybody go and pile on their state capitals. That's where it's been clear over the past 4 years. That's where real change happens, whether it be good or bad. Go do that. Go support a governor like DeSantis, or go hammer those people in Georgia that are leftists. But no, they went to Washington, D.C. And what do? They go there and they donate and give money to Stop the Steal. Stop the Steal is a robbery, right? They're not giving any money to Trump. This bus tour that's going around, it's full of a bunch of grifters. I will be saying their names eventually, but they're a bunch of grifters. They go and they consistently, and I know because I've gone and spoke at some of these things because I bought into it for a while. And I've defended them, and I won't defend them anymore. They put every single dime they make in their pockets. It's a scam. Many of these PACs that you send your money to are scams. These hashtags that pop up all over the place, and they have these rallies, they're scams. And the egos that come from these people are horrendous. The walkaway movement, Brandon Straka, and these other people that are up there doing that stuff does nothing. It does nothing for anyone. Those people make a ton of money, and they get invited to the White House. One of the other stupid things that come out of the Trump administration. Not saying that's the president, the Trump administration. They just invite this weirdness in there. Tell me one thing the walkaway movement has done with Brandon Straka over the past 4 years. Do you think that there's liberals that walked away because of Brandon Straka? No, they walked away because of Trump. They didn't walk away because of these grifters. But what happens is people believe in this nonsense, and they go up there. And I was in Chicago not too long ago, and Brandon Straka came up there and they had a huge walkaway event. He showed up, spoke, and then left. He didn't even stay because he had to go do an interview at one of the TV stations. It doesn't do anything. Obviously, it didn't do anything at all. The president's in the position he's in. All that money that's been given to these people. Not only, there's other people out there that are doing podcasts like this, or that have real experience that are, trying to make a difference. Heck, I've been driving all over this country trying to get people to wake up. Not asking for money, being a part of the conversation. These people go out and they take donations and they raise money and they get paid a lot of money to come give these speeches. The speeches are all about themselves. I remember, I don't remember that other guy's name. Tall guy, he cleans up neighborhoods. He doesn't really clean up neighborhoods. He goes in and cleans up a little area and then puts it all over social media. I literally told that guy, you probably know what I'm talking about. I can't remember his name. I told him 2 years ago at a festival down in Florida, and I said, listen, you're a good guy. I think what you're doing is right. Don't get involved with these other people, because what's going to happen is your ego could get out of control, and your message of what you're doing is going to be lost. And that's what he did. It doesn't. I've watched several videos where they're like, okay, go. They didn't edit it properly. Okay, go. Okay, they start walking with a bag. They go over and dump it in the trash, and they say what they say. It's all staged. Nothing occurs in those areas. There's been all these different people saying, oh, we're responsible for Amy Coney Barrett. No, you're not. The president's responsible for that, not anybody else. There's no grifter that went up and convinced senators to confirm her, right? Those senators did it because they wanted to do it because they thought it was best to get them votes. This grifting stuff, which I didn't even know what that word was, now that I see what it's about and I start looking into these people, many of who I've supported by coming and speaking at their events, I now know where the money goes. It goes straight into their pockets. Maybe I was naive thinking that they were doing real things, but that's not the case. And I challenge some of those people to call me and tell me the reality. Because let me tell you, folks, and any of you that belong to some of these groups, you can go out and tell them, I am on the prowl. And as I figure out exactly what's happening, I'm going to point it out. Because it does nothing. It does nothing, and you must stop following these people and supporting them. That guy, Ali, is a felon. He's a liar, and they're just making tons of money. He actually set up a wish list on Amazon, and that's where the money was being routed to. It pisses me off about as much as this. You can hear this popping and cracking back here. What is it with the Northeast and the way they do their heat? Why can't you just have what we have in the South, where you have central air, heat and air, and it blows through a vent and it's nice and quiet? What is with this oil stuff? And it goes through your entire house and it sounds like somebody's trying to get inside of your wall. Plus you got to pay for all that oil. What is with this? Who came up with this idea? It's a horrible idea. As soon as they came up with electricity and somebody invented the central heat and air, everybody should have just said, done with that. Done with that oil. Anyway, that's my complaint for the day. Now, I want you to remember that phrase that I always say on the show, the totality of the circumstances. Right? It's more important now than it's ever been really in modern history. When you look at the Russia collusion and the nonsense that went over the past 4 years of trying to overthrow a president, when you look at the virus that came here and how it just exploded in the elderly clinics, the riots that have occurred, the degradation of law enforcement, and the financial collapse of cities, all of it has happened where Democrats are in charge. The totality of the circumstances. Remember that. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and I'm out of here.